Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. It's December 30th. Today is day 451. President Jimmy Carter has died at 100 years old, famous for his role in the Camp David Accords, a peace agreement between the Egyptian president Anwar al-Sadat and Israeli Minister Menachem Begin. Those were major achievements of the Carter administration. Carter's dedication to promoting peace in the Middle East continues today through the work of the Carter Center. He is known for his role in human rights, his contribution to resolving conflicts. He was only a one-term president. Many of you may know of his works after he became president through Habitat for Humanity and many other efforts. He, through the Carter Center, supports a viable two-state solution. He's been very, very involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict with the goals to promote a comprehensive peace in the region for decades. Much of this information is from the Carter Center's website. The conflict between major Palestinian political parties, Fatah and Hamas, was a particular focus. The Carter Center's played a role in the Palestinian elections at various points. Palestinian national unity has been a critical issue. In 2007, former President Jimmy Carter did an NPR interview about his book, Peace, Not Apartheid. And that book got a huge amount of criticism. It was a bestseller. It generated a passionate response. It's getting a lot of attention right now since he has passed. And many are saying, was that book fortuitous? Was he being prophetic in that language? But this is from that NPR interview from 2007. NPR said that bestseller generated a passionate response in critics who said that it was slanted towards Palestinians and that it was full of inaccuracy. Since the book was published, Carter said that he was branded an anti-Semite and a bigot. Reaction to the book included the resignation of 14 members of the Carter Center Community Board. They said that Carter put too much blame on Israel. Carter responded to those charges at Brandeis University in 2007, where he was later rebutted by Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz. In that appearance, the former president defended the book's accuracy, except for one passage that he said was terribly worded. And he added that, it was worded in a way that seemed to justify terrorism by Palestinians against Israeli citizens. So may President Carter's soul rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. News from the last 24 hours in Israel. There was an article recently published about how Israel built an AI factory for war and then unleashed it on Gaza. Years before the war, Israel transformed its intelligence unit into an AI testing ground. So this was the Washington Post investigation. It revealed previously unreported details on the inner workings of this artificial intelligence program, along with secretive decades-long history of its development. Also, it's been announced, I think I shared this yesterday, that Netanyahu was having his prostate removed. Netanyahu does have prostate cancer. Hamas has denied Israeli claims on the details of the assassination of the political bureau chief of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran. So Israel claimed that the operation was carried out by a bomb that was planted in his room. But Hamas has said that the investigations conducted by the Joint Committee between its security apparatus and the Iranian security agencies concluded that the assassination was executed using a guided missile carrying 7.5 kilograms of explosives, directly targeting the marketable phone. So that has been in the news. They said that the movement described the Israeli narrative broadcast as a desperate attempt to divert attention from the compound crime of violating the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran with a missile targeting one of its official facilities. Hebrew news source Yedoth Aharonot said that the Israeli prosecutor is investigating the causes of death of a Palestinian man from Gaza who died in an Israeli jail due to the lack of food and the lack of hygiene. A 29-year-old Israeli named Alexander Granovsky has faced indictment for allegedly spying for Iran. He was accused of arson, surveillance, and sending data to Iranian handlers. He admitted that his actions could harm Israel's security. Related to Yemen, Israel set out their case before the UN Security Council for a full assault on Yemen's Houthis, claiming that the Iranian-backed group now represents a well-armed terrorist army that threatens not only the regional economy, but the entire global order. Israel put this out before the UN Security Council, and they're asking for a full assault on Houthi forces in Yemen. The Israeli Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar, has also called for the Houthis to be designated a terrorist organization. They were a terrorist organization, then they were taken off the terrorist list, at least in the United States. But this is an international request before the UN Security Council, I presume, a step that would make it more difficult for Iran to provide material support without facing further economic sanctions. The UN Security Council told the Israeli ambassador that condemns the air raids that killed Yemeni civilians, as well as the Houthi attacks. You'll recall that this past week, Israel attacked near the airport when the World Health Organization's chief was actually departing from the airport. Tonight, Monday night in Israel, there was a missile that was launched from Yemen that was intercepted before it was able to enter Israeli territory. This was towards the center of the country. There were no reported injuries. Haaretz reported that people had anxiety. There were some people that were injured on their way to a protected area, but there were no direct injuries from that attack from Yemen. The US and the UK have conducted strikes on a certain province in northwestern Yemen, according to a local Yemeni news agency. Updates on what's going on in Gaza. The Israeli army announced the completion of the military offensive in Jabalia. The Kamal Adwan Hospital is officially out of service and will no longer be in service. There are several reports of Israeli soldiers who've been killed. Yuval Shaham was killed in battles in the north of the Gaza Strip. There was another soldier seriously injured in battle. That was from the Israeli Army radio. There were a number of Israeli Army deaths since the start of the military operation last October in North Gaza. That number was to 40. The Israeli army announced Sergeant Uriel Peretz, 23, was killed in North Gaza, and the IDF reported 3 other soldiers were severely wounded in the same incident. There was a high-impact weather system that's going through the Gaza Strip, and that started yesterday and today, and it will go through tomorrow. Heavy rain showers, but not only rain showers, it's the most intense rainfall in North Gaza and Gaza City, and it's followed by moderate intensity in Khan Yunis and Rafah. And so those rains were supposed to start last night with intensifying waves today and tomorrow. They said that there could be 60 millimeters in high impact scenario and 25 to 50 millimeters in a lower impact scenario. But that means that there could be flooding, rising water levels along the sea, and then strong wind gusts are expected, particularly today, with wave heights exceeding 2 meters. Now, what's really important to understand is for these tent cities where there's tens of thousands of people living in these refugee camps and living in these tent cities, it's cold, the conditions are miserable. Already a 1-month-old baby, a boy, died from hypothermia in Deir al-Balah in the tent camp. He's the 6th victim and the 5th baby to die due to the Israeli blockade, inadequate living conditions. The Gaza government's media office reported that freezing cold and frost from waves has caused 7 deaths among the people living in tents, with the numbers likely to rise in the next couple of days. Amnesty International has called for the release of Dr. Hussam Abu Zaya. He's the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital. It was reported that he was taken to the State Taman facility. That's that horrific facility that has had so much press about abuse in that prison in the Negev. The Israeli Arab MK and the Knesset, Ahmad Tabi, urged Defense Minister Katz to release Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, who's detained in State Taman. Tabi cited harsh conditions, torture reports, and international concern. The director of Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City said that there were 2 cases of polio confirmed in Gaza. I have a couple of updates from the West Bank. Palestinian Authority is trying to prove that it can govern post-war Gaza, and it's begun its largest operation in 3 decades against militants in the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is trying to prove itself. So Netanyahu said that they will not be allowed to rule in Gaza, but others are pressuring and saying Palestinians need to rule themselves. Key figures in the far-right Netanyahu coalition have pushed for the annexation of part or all of the Palestinian territories. But in the latest round of ceasefire negotiations, this is according to the Washington Post, Israel has agreed to let the authority take over the administration of the Rafah border between Gaza and Egypt for a short period, according to certain Egyptian sources. The PA this month launched Operation Protect the Homeland. Security forces have already killed 3 people, a 19-year-old passerby, a 14-year-old boy, and a militant. They arrested more than 24 militants, wounding others, dismantling dozens of explosives. Yesterday, Sunday, they reported the death of a member of PA security forces, a member of the Presidential Guard. Israel also had a days-long raid in Jenin in September that killed 21 people, according to the health ministry. Those 21 does not distinguish between fighters and civilians. The defense forces did say that 14 of the 21 were militants. And the reason I'm sharing that is because of resistance in the Jenin area. The authority had clashes with militants. They said that 13 Palestinians, including 8 in Jenin, have been killed since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, since 2023. So these are statistics showing that there's been significant resistance in the West Bank. On Saturday night, local sources reported that a journalist, Shaza al-Sabah, was shot in the head by security forces in the Jenin camp. Her sister had already been killed. There are now contested details about the case and whether or not who actually did the killing. Palestine Journalist Syndicate has called for an investigation. A Hamas official, Mahmoud Dawai, criticized the Palestinian Authority for repressive policies across the West Bank and arresting citizens from the Palestinian Polytechnic University in Hebron, calling it irresponsible and unpatriotic, and that it deepens Palestinian divisions and reinforces oppressive practices within the West Bank. In Israel, one of their news sources, in a very unusual move, said that 2 militants from the Jenin brigades actually surrendered not to the Palestinian Authority, but surrendered to Israeli security forces. And there have been settler attacks on the West Bank that have been carried out in the Mugayir village near Ramallah, and settler attacks in Jericho. There was an ongoing Israeli operation with a bulldozer in Jericho City and the Wadi Kelt area as well. So all that's happening in the West Bank. In Syria, at least 6 people were killed. Others were injured in an Israeli attack. And I wanted to let you know that in mid-December, Van Hollen, senator from Maryland, and another senator expressed bipartisan support for the Syrian Kurdish partners in the fight to prevent the resurgence of ISIS in Syria. They announced the intent to introduce sanctions legislation if Turkey does not renew the ceasefire in that northeastern part Syria. Bashar al-Assad fled Syria secretively under the cover of night and a fake political address. And there was a whole Washington Post step-by-step detailing of his last days in power, if you're interested in that. The IDF has entered 2 additional areas of the demilitarized zone in Syria. They originally, at least in past days, had exited certain demilitarized zones, but they entered the area of Kenitra and Al-Bath, searching a government building and expelling staff, according to reports. And 5 people were killed in South Lebanon in the town of Qiyam today, according to UNIFIL reports. In the U.S., Haaretz has an article condemning Biden's presidency, laying out all the missed opportunities. The article is called Biden's Year of Missed Opportunities in the U.S., Israel's Relations, Gaza, and Beyond. It talks about how the administration is boasting of all these successes, like helping to defend Israel against Iran's ballistic missiles, but critics are noting all the opportunities that President Joe Biden passed up to hold Israel accountable, end the war, and prevent hunger in Gaza. All of this was ramping up while all of this was happening while Netanyahu was ramping up his doublespeak. It's a sad indictment on President Biden, who obviously is quite confused about this Israel that he knows and loves, this country and the people. And he doesn't seem to understand why Israel and Netanyahu are acting in such an irascible way. This is not who he thinks or seems to know Israel to be. So I'll close there. A lot of significant news happening in the Middle East. It's Monday. Death continues to abound. There's deaths in Syria, there's deaths in Gaza, there's deaths of Israeli soldiers, there's death in South Lebanon. And so my encouragement is to continue to pray, continue to work in your advocacy efforts, calling for a comprehensive ceasefire on all fronts so that alternatives to war might be pursued and peace might prevail. May God go before us in the name of Christ. Amen.